You know that feeling when a movie just lands perfectly? Like, it comes out of nowhere, puts an actor you love in a totally unexpected role, and somehow it all just clicks. That was the original Nobody for a lot of people. Bob Odenkirk, action star. Wild. But what happens when that kind of surprise hit gets a sequel? I mean, can you really capture that lightning in a bottle twice? Today, we're doing a deep dive into Nobody 2. It's definitely highly anticipated, or, well, maybe entirely unasked for, depending on who you talk to. Obviously, still starring Bob Odenkirk. We've pulled together a whole stack of recent reviews, audience reactions too, trying to unpack why this film seems to be splitting opinions so much. Our mission here is basically to pull out the key insights, the good and the critical, to help you get a handle on what this new action flick actually delivers, and maybe where it falls a bit short.
Yeah, and we've got a good range of sources lined up. We're looking at Slant Magazine, The Film Verdict, IndieWire, RogerEbert.com, AV Club. Plus, we took a comprehensive look at Rotten Tomatoes, comparing both the critic scores and, importantly, what verified audiences are saying. So, yeah. Get ready for a pretty nuanced look at what sounds like a very, very violent family vacation.
Okay, so let's kick things off. Let's set the scene for Nobody 2. The first one, its whole appeal, really, was seeing Bob Odenkirk, the guy from Mr. Show, Better Call Saul, these kind of nebbishy, everyday roles, suddenly just unleashing hell like John Wick. So Nobody 2 comes along and tries to play that same card again.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting how they position it. They bring back the director, Timo Tjahjanto. Now, he's quite an auteur, known for what they call new Indonesian extreme cinema. So think really intense, sometimes brutal action. This is actually his English language debut.
Oh, interesting. So a specific kind of action pedigree there.
Definitely. And the writers are back to Derek Kolstad, who, created John Wick and Aaron Rabin. The basic setup is Hutch Mansell, Odenkirk's character, is still dealing with the fallout from the first movie. He burned all that Russian mob money, remember?
Right, the big bonfire.
Exactly. So now he owes this massive debt to this shady figure called the Barber. And to try and reconnect with his family, his wife Becca, son Brady, daughter Sammy, he takes them on this vacation.
A nice, normal family vacation?
Well, supposedly, to this town called Plummerville. It's built around apparently the oldest water park in America. It's meant to be this nostalgic spot from Hutch's childhood vacations with his dad, played by Christopher Lloyd again.
Who was great in the first one.
Oh, fantastic. And his brother, Harry, RZA. But, surprise, surprise, this idyllic little town, it's actually a front for all sorts of bad stuff. Run by a corrupt Mayor Wyatt, that's John Ortiz, a crooked Sheriff Abel, played by Colin Hanks.
Colin Hanks, okay.
And the big bad, this terrifying mob boss named Lundina, played by Sharon Stone.
Sharon Stone. Wow, okay. So, quite the setup. But here's where it gets really interesting, right? That core joke of the first film, Odenkirk, the ultimate dad bod assassin, did still work for critics the second time around? Or did the novelty wear off?
That is exactly the question many critics jumped on. I mean, what happens when that initial shock value, that surprise, is just gone?
Yeah.
Reviews from RogerEbert.com and AV Club, they really highlighted this. They basically said the surprise factor is gone and that the movie's, quote, sole punchline has become a grating dad joke.
Oof, a grating dad joke.
Yeah.
It's like the film apparently ditches that whole internal conflict Hutch had, the mild-mannered guy versus the killer inside. Now he's just sort of fully embracing the easy dopamine hits of hitting people very hard. That's another quote.
So less conflict, more just hitting people.
Seems like it, according to some. IndieWire, they were particularly harsh compared it to shovelware sequels.
Shovelware, like just churned out. Exactly, like those cheap sequels from the DVD era, basically. They said it felt like a hurried Wikipedia plot summary of a more fleshed-out film that doesn't actually exist.
Wow, okay. That's pretty damning.
It is. And some even felt Odenkirk himself seemed a bit checked out or maybe bored, like a comedian telling the same joke one too many times.
So, the core premise might have felt stale to some critics, but surely it wasn't all about the narrative critiques. I mean, the setting sounds fun. A family vacation, a water park that must have offered some unique action opportunities.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where some other reviews found more positive things to say, even with the narrative quibbles. It definitely leans into genre mashups. The Film Verdict review, for instance, called it a mix of Home Alone and National Lampoon's Vacation, but, with John Wick levels of violence.
Okay, I can kind of picture that. Vacation with body counts.
Pretty much. You apparently get Hutch making these Clark Griswold-style complaints like, I just want to make memories with my family.
Yeah.
Usually right after dispatching some goons.
Right.
And there are specific visual gags mentioned, like Hutch apparently uses a whack-a-mole mallet as a weapon at one point.
Okay, that's kind of funny.
And the big finale involves booby-trapped water park rides, described as something Kevin McAllister from Home Alone would be proud of.
Huh. Okay, so they did use the setting then.
They did, though some critics, like IndieWire again, felt it wasn't quite enough. They argued the film didn't fully exploit the theme park potential beyond maybe a few key moments, like a Hall of Mirrors scene or the finale. So maybe a missed opportunity there for some.
Gotcha. So, okay, we have these really varied critical takes, some finding it stale, others enjoying the action and setting. How did this translate to the audience? Because you mentioned Rotten Tomatoes shows a pretty clear divide.
Yeah, it's quite stark, actually. You've got a 76% tomatometer score from critics, which, is certified fresh technically, but it definitely reflects those lukewarm or mixed reviews we've been talking about.
76, okay. Still decent.
But then you look at the audience score, the popcorn meter, based on over 500 verified ratings, and it's sitting at 88%. That's quite a bit higher.
88. Okay, yeah, that's a significant gap. What does that tell us?
Well, I think it really points to different expectations, doesn't it? If you dig into the audience comments, a lot of them are pretty straightforward. Things like good, fun, not as funny as the first one, but still enjoyable.
Right, just want a good time.
Exactly. Or fun, fast-paced movie with a tight 90-minute runtime. People praised the action and humor combo, calling it a favorite. Some just flat out said it was an absolute blast.
Yeah.
So for a big chunk of the audience, it seems like it delivered what they came for. More of that specific nobody action vibe. The formula worked for them.
Okay, so the audience was largely satisfied, just wanting more of the same thing they liked the first time. But the critics, even those who found parts to praise, seemed to want something more.
Precisely. Well, some critics did give props to Odenkirk for staying committed, and they liked the new villains. Sharon Stone apparently makes a wonderfully campy villain, and Colin Hanks is deliciously smug as the corrupt sheriff.
Good casting helps.
It does. But even with that, many critics circled back to the feeling that the film only offered, quote, the skeleton of a narrative. They felt there were no real stakes, that the character relationships, the morality of what Hutch does, it was all largely ignored.
Just action for action's sake, maybe.
That seems to be the critique. RogerEbert.com called it a cover of the original film, saying it lacked the charge of the new. And that really brings up a bigger question, what makes a sequel feel necessary? Is just changing the scenery and adding more carnage enough, or does it need to actually expand the world or dig deeper into the characters?
Yeah, that's a good point. And speaking of digging deeper, it sounds like some critics felt there were opportunities for Nobody to explore some themes, maybe about family or violence, but it didn't really go there.
That's another key piece of feedback, yeah. Especially around the thematic stuff. There's apparently a brief subplot, or maybe just a mention, about fathers wanting their sons to be better, Hutch even supposedly tells his son that there are better ways to deal with things than violence.
Okay, so it touches on it.
It touches on it, but critics like the one at IndieWire noted that the film just drops it. It doesn't really explore that idea deeply or delve into the son's own potential aggression that might be bubbling up. IndieWire specifically said the film doesn't actually have much interest in challenging its protagonist. It resolves that whole tension being a dad versus being a killer in what they called the easiest, most conflict-free route possible.
So it raises an interesting idea, but then sort of backs away from exploring it.
Seems like it. And some reviewers also felt the film kind of wobbled tonally, like it flirted with being a full-on parody, almost a National Lampoon's John Wick, but never quite committed,
Right.
which apparently led to some just weird illogical moments like finding piles of money right next to barrels clearly labeled explosive material in some warehouse, stuff that felt more silly than genuinely clever or satirical.
Right, not quite parody, not quite serious, just awkward.
Potentially, yeah. Bit of an identity crisis, maybe.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, after diving into all these reviews for Nobody 2, it really seems like a film with two halves, doesn't it? For a lot of the audience, it sounds like it delivered exactly what they signed up for. More Bob Odenkirk kicking ass in unexpected ways, brutal action in a fun setting, bit of humor, job done. But for many critics, and maybe some viewers too, that lack of narrative depth, the fact that the central joke felt a bit tired, characters not really growing, it left them wanting something more substantial.
Absolutely. And it really leaves you with an interesting thought to chew on, especially now with so many sequels and franchises dominating everything. How much does an action film sequel need to evolve? Does it have to deepen its characters, explore new themes? Or is it enough to just deliver more of the same high octane stuff that people liked the first time? When does that successful gimmick, that unexpected casting, start being a charming novelty and just start feeling like, well, like a tired repeat?